The man was shocked to discover that the rocket returning to Earth had already begun launching. This made him instantly panic because if he didn't board the rocket, it meant he would be left alone on the moon. He immediately drove towards the rocket, and as he approached, he noticed that there were still 6 rockets that hadn't launched yet. This made him breathe a sigh of relief, but just at that moment, 5 of those rockets suddenly took off simultaneously. He turned his head and saw that fortunately there was still one last rocket that hadn't launched. He hurriedly turned the steering wheel and slammed on the gas pedal, rushing towards that rocket. At the same time, he used his communication device to call out to the rocket that hadn't taken off, begging it not to launch without him. But at this point, meteorite fragments had already entered the orbit, and they interfered with the communication system of that last rocket. The command center didn't receive Jack's call at all, and resolutely decided to initiate the rocket's launch sequence. Jack saw this and became extremely anxious. He couldn't understand why his teammates couldn't even notice that one person was missing. Coincidentally, his 2 teammates sitting next to him both had stiff necks, with their necks tilted to the other side. They just happened not to notice the fact that he was absent. However, Jack didn't give up. He drove the lunar vehicle and kept rushing towards the rocket, crossing over one meteor crater after another. Unexpectedly, just as he was crossing the last meteor crater, he was surprised to find that it was a giant basin. Jack tragically fell into it. At this time, the rocket was already preparing to ignite. When Jack struggled to climb out of the basin, he could only watch in despair as the rocket took off. Jack immediately started complaining about his teammates, but he suddenly realized that the meteorites had already hit the Earth hard. The blue planet was instantly engulfed in a sea of fire like a doomsday disaster. His eyes were filled with despair and shock. After 8 years of countless days and nights of hard work to prevent the asteroid from hitting the Earth, they had developed and executed the Moonshield plan. The plan had originally been proceeding very smoothly. They had successfully launched the Hammer of the Universe, but due to the influence of solar storms, the plan couldn't be executed as scheduled. Jack, with his last hope, turned on the all-channel communication and repeatedly called out to Earth. But a week passed, and there was still no response. At this point, he had to accept a cruel reality. The Moonshield plan had failed and the Earth was destroyed. He had become the only survivor in this universe. The painful reality plunged him into deep loneliness. However, there were still ample supplies in the lunar base which could at least ensure that he would grow old alone. World without onlookers gave him unprecedented freedom. Jack began to let himself go. He decided to set up a memorial hall according to Chinese traditions to mourn the Earth and all the departed humans. He even put the name of his secretly beloved boss on the memorial tablet. Not only that, but he also prepared a romantic candlelit dinner for his boss. He not only poured out his feelings of missing her to his boss's portrait, but also kissed her portrait without hesitation. However, he never dreamed that his boss and colleagues who had survived on the distant Earth were watching his series of performances that were both funny and sad through a 360-degree live broadcast without any blind spots.